I wasn't supposed to be here. That was the only thought looping through my mind as I sat in the parking lot of the Rosewood estate, hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. The wedding was inside his wedding, Damon's wedding, to her, to the woman whose smile probably didn't crack under pressure, whose life didn't fall apart in a studio apartment with unpaid bills stacked on the counter. I told myself I came for closure, that watching him marry someone else would finally kill whatever pathetic hope still flickered in the corner of my chest. But closure felt a lot like self-destruction, and I was an expert at both. Through the windshield, I could see the glow of string lights wrapped around the garden pavilion. Laughter drifted through the autumn air, champagne glasses clinking in celebration. I imagined Damon in his tailored tuxedo. The one I used to joke made him look like James Bond. I imagined her in white, radiant and perfect, and everything I would never be. And then the tears came. Hot, silent, humiliating. They slid down my cheeks and I didn't bother wiping them away. What was the point? No one could see me out here. No one cared. I was invisible, a ghost haunting the edges of a life that had moved on without me. I don't know how long I sat there, drowning in my own misery, before the knock came. 3 sharp raps against the driver's side window. My heart stopped. I jerked my head toward the sound, my breath catching in my throat. A man stood outside my car, his silhouette framed by the dim glow of the parking lot lights. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black suit that looked like it cost more than my rent. His face was shadowed, but I could feel his eyes on me dark, assessing, impossibly calm. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he knocked again, slower this time, deliberate. My hands trembled as I fumbled for the window button, lowering it just a crack. Cold air rushed in, carrying the faint scent of expensive cologne and something else, smoke maybe, or danger. "You're crying," he said. His voice was low, smooth, edged with something I couldn't place. Not quite concern, not quite indifference. It slid over me like velvet wrapped around a blade. I swiped at my cheeks, suddenly furious at myself for looking so weak. "I'm fine. You're not." The certainty in his tone made my stomach twist. He said it like he knew me, like he could see straight through the lie and into the wreckage beneath. I hated him for it. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He tilted his head slightly, studying me with the kind of focus that made my skin prickle. "Get in." I blinked. "What?" "Get in," he repeated, gesturing toward the passenger seat of a sleek black car idling a few spaces away. I hadn't even noticed it before. "You don't belong here." A bitter laugh escaped me. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're sitting in a parking lot crying over something or someone who isn't worth it." His gaze flicked toward the estate, then back to me. "And I know you're about 5 minutes away from doing something stupid, so get in the car." There was no warmth in his words, no pity, just cold, unbending authority, like he was used to people obeying him without question. I should have told him to go to hell, should have rolled up the window and driven away, but something about the way he looked at me like I was a problem he intended to solve made me hesitate. "Why?" I asked quietly. For the first time, something shifted in his expression, a flicker of something almost human beneath the ice. Because no one should cry alone. My chest tightened. I didn't know this man. Didn't know his name, his story, what he wanted from me. But in that moment, with tears still wet on my face and my heart splintered into 1,000 pieces, his words were the kindest thing anyone had said to me in months. Against every instinct screaming at me to stay safe, to stay small, I opened the door. The interior of his car smelled like leather and danger. I slid into the passenger seat, my body tense, hyper-aware of the man now settling into the driver's side. Up close, he was even more striking, sharp jawline, dark hair swept back, eyes the color of midnight storms. He didn't look at me as he started the engine, just pulled out of the parking lot with the kind of effortless control that suggested he did everything that way. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Away from here." That's not an answer. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's the only one you're getting." I should have been terrified. Should have demanded he stop the car. Should have jumped out at the first red light. But I didn't. Maybe because I had nothing left to lose. Maybe because, for the first time in months, I didn't feel invisible. We drove in silence, the city lights. blurring past the window like fallen stars. I watched him from the corner of my eye, the way his hands rested on the wheel, steady and sure. The way his jaw tightened when we passed a police car, the way he seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders without ever buckling under it. "What's your name?" I finally asked. He was quiet for a long moment, long enough that I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, without looking at me, he said, "Lucian." "Lucian," I repeated, tasting the name on my tongue. It felt dangerous, forbidden. "And you?" "Isla." He nodded once, as if filing the information away. "Isla," he said softly, almost to himself. "You shouldn't have been there tonight." "I know." "Then why were you?" I swallowed hard, the tears threatening to return. "Because I'm an idiot who thought watching him marry someone else would make it hurt less." Lucian's hands tightened on the wheel. "Did it?" "No." He pulled the car to a stop along a quiet overlook, the city sprawling, below us like a sea of glittering lights. When he finally turned to look at me, his expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something raw, something aching. "Then let me give you something better to remember tonight by," he said, his voice dangerously soft. And before I could ask what he meant, the world outside the car exploded in gunfire. The first gunshot shattered the night like broken glass. I didn't scream. Couldn't. The sound locked itself in my throat, trapped behind the sudden slam of my heart against my ribs. Lucian moved before my brain could process what was happening. His hand shot across the console, pressing my head down below the dashboard with a force that was somehow both brutal and protective. "Stay down," he commanded, his voice steel wrapped in ice. Another shot, then another. The rear window exploded, showering us with fragments of safety glass that glittered like diamonds in the darkness. I could hear men shouting, the screech of tires, the metallic click of weapons being loaded. My entire body trembled, pressed against the leather seat, Lucian's palm still firm against my neck. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. But the acrid smell of gunpowder burning through the air told me otherwise. Lucian shifted, and I heard the smooth whisper of metal, a gun being drawn from somewhere inside his jacket. He moved with the kind of precision that spoke of muscle memory, of a man who had done this before, many times before. "Who are you?" I whispered, the words scraped raw. He didn't answer. Instead, he released me and rose slightly, firing 3 shots through the shattered window with calculated calm. Each pull of the trigger was deliberate, controlled, like he was conducting a symphony of violence. The return fire stopped. For a moment, there was only the sound of my ragged breathing and the distant wail of sirens beginning to keen through the night. Lucian sat back, his expression unchanged, as if we'd just experienced a mild inconvenience rather than an attempted assassination. "Are they," I started. "Dead?" "No. Warning shots." He holstered his weapon and turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. "But they'll regroup. We need to move. We need to call the police." His laugh was short, bitter. "The police can't help you now, Isla." The way he said my name like a promise and a threat woven together sent a chill down my spine. He pulled away from the overlook, tires shrieking against asphalt, and suddenly we were flying through the city streets at a speed that made my stomach drop. I pressed myself back against the seat, my hands gripping the door handle. What the hell is happening? Who were those people? Enemies. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters right now. He took a corner so sharply I slid against the door. His eyes flicked to me briefly, something almost apologetic crossing his features. "Put on your seatbelt." I scrambled to obey, my fingers shaking, so badly I could barely click it into place. My mind was racing, trying to piece together the fragments of the last 15 minutes. The parking lot, the tears, this stranger who had appeared like something out of a fever dream. And now bullets, blood, danger closing in from all sides. "This is because of you," I said, and it wasn't a question. Lucian's jaw tightened. "Yes." "Who are you?" For a long moment he didn't respond. We flew past streetlights, their glow washing over his face in rhythmic intervals, light, shadow, light, shadow. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost tired. "Someone you should have run from the moment I knocked on your window." My throat constricted. "Then why did you make me get in the car?" "Because running from me would have been the smart choice." He glanced at me, and for the first time, I saw something vulnerable flicker in those dark eyes. "You didn't look like you wanted to be smart tonight." He was right. God help me, he was right. We drove for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. The city gradually giving way to quieter streets lined with mansions hiding behind iron gates and manicured hedges. Old money, the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Finally, Lucian turned down a private drive, the car gliding past security cameras I pretended not to notice. At the end of the long, tree-lined path sat a house that looked more like a fortress, all stone and sharp angles and windows that reflected the moonlight like watchful eyes. He parked in front of massive double doors and killed the engine. The silence was deafening. "Where are we?" I asked. "Somewhere safe." He turned to face me fully, and I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand still rested close to where his gun was concealed. "Somewhere they can't reach you." "They? Who?" My voice cracked. "I don't understand any of this. I was just sitting in a parking lot. I was just trying to survive," he finished softly. "I know." Something in his tone made my chest ache. Like he understood that feeling intimately, like he'd been there himself, once upon a time. "You're in danger now, Isla," he continued, his gaze holding mine with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. "Because you were seen with me, because you're in my car, under my protection, whether you asked for it or not." "Protection from what?" "From people who would use you to hurt me." The weight of those words settled over me like a shroud. I thought about the gunfire, the casual way he'd returned it, the house that looked like a fortress, the way everyone seemed to know to fear who he was. "You're not just some businessman, are you?" I whispered. Lucian's smile was sad, almost self-deprecating. "No, Isla, I'm not." He opened his door and stepped out, moving around to my side with that same predatory grace. When he opened my door, he extended his hand, a gesture that felt far too gentlemanly, given the circumstances. "Come inside," he said, "and I'll tell you everything." I stared at his outstretched hand, my heart hammering. Every rational thought screamed at me to refuse, to demand he take me home, to run as far and as fast as I could. But when I looked up at his face, at the darkness and danger and something heartbreakingly human lurking beneath, I knew I was already lost. I took his hand, and as his fingers closed around mine, warm and impossibly gentle despite the violence they'd just enacted, one thought crystallized in my mind. I'd just made a deal with the devil, and I wasn't sure I wanted to take it back. The inside of Lucian's home was nothing like I expected. I'd braced myself for cold marble and sterile luxury, the kind of soulless wealth that screamed power without warmth. Instead, I walked into something that felt almost lived in. Dark hardwood floors gleamed under soft lighting. Leather-bound books lined the walls of the entryway. A fireplace crackled somewhere deeper in the house, its amber glow spilling into the hallway like an invitation. It was beautiful, and somehow that made it more terrifying. Lucian's hand remained at the small of my back as he guided me through the foyer. Past rooms I only glimpsed a study with floor-to-ceiling windows, a dining room with a table that could seat 20, hallways that seemed to stretch into infinity. The house felt enormous, a labyrinth designed to swallow people whole. "This way," he said quietly, directing me toward what appeared to be a sitting room. I stepped inside and immediately felt the warmth from the fireplace wash over me. The room was smaller than the others, more intimate. 2 burgundy armchairs faced the flames, a crystal decanter of amber liquid sitting on the table between them. The walls were lined with more books, and in the corner sat a chess set, mid-game, as if someone had just stepped away. "Sit," Lucian instructed, though his tone had softened. I lowered myself into one of the chairs, my body still trembling with residual adrenaline. He poured 2 glasses of what I assumed was whiskey, pressing one into my hands before taking the seat across from me. "Drink," he said. "It'll help." I obeyed, the liquid burning a path down my throat and settling warm in my stomach. He was right, it did help. Or maybe it just gave me something to focus on, besides the fact that I'd nearly died 20 minutes ago. Lucian watched me over the rim of his own glass, his expression unreadable in the firelight. The shadows played across his features, highlighting the sharp angles of his face, the slight scar that traced his left eyebrow. He looked like something carved from darkness itself. "You said you'd tell me everything," I finally managed, my voice steadier than I felt. He nodded slowly, setting his glass down. "I did. So tell me, who are you really?" Lucian leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving mine. When he spoke, His voice was measured, careful. My name is Lucian Moretti. My family controls most of the city's less legitimate enterprises. Gambling, protection, imports that don't go through official channels. He paused, letting the words sink in. What happened tonight, the shooting that was the Volkov Bratva? Russians. They've been trying to move into our territory for months. My hands tightened around the glass. You're telling me you're in the Mafia. I'm telling you I'm the head of the Moretti family. His eyes darkened. There's a difference. Is there? The question came out sharper than I intended. Because from where I'm sitting, you just dragged me into a gang war. I didn't drag you anywhere. His voice remained calm, but I heard the edge beneath it. You got into my car of your own free will. Because you told me to. And you chose to listen. He stood abruptly, moving to the fireplace, his back to me. The flames cast his shadow long across the floor. I gave you an order, Isla. Most people in this city would have obeyed without question, out of fear or respect or both. But you? He turned, and something in his expression made my breath catch. You got in that car because you wanted to disappear. Even if just for a night. The truth of his words hit me like a physical blow. He was right. God, he was right. And I hated him for seeing it so clearly. That doesn't change what you are, I whispered. No, he agreed quietly. It doesn't. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the crackling fire. I should have been terrified. Should have been demanding he take me home, take me to the police, take me anywhere but here. But instead, I found myself studying him, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the mantle like he was holding himself back from something. Why did you help me? I asked. In the parking lot. You didn't know me. You had no reason to. I saw you crying. He said it simply, as if that explained everything. Alone. In the dark. At someone else's celebration. And I thought, he trailed off, something vulnerable flickering across his face before he locked it away. I thought no one should have to feel that invisible. My throat tightened. You felt sorry for me. No. He moved closer, crouching down so we were at eye level, his intensity pinning me in place. I recognized you. You'd never seen me before tonight. Not you specifically. His voice dropped lower, intimate in a way that made my skin prickle. But I recognized that look, that feeling of being erased from someone's story, of watching them move on while you're still bleeding. His hand reached out, hovering near my face but not quite touching. I know what it's like to be invisible, Isla, even when you're the most dangerous person in the room. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The air between us felt charged, electric, like lightning waiting to strike. What happened to you? I whispered. Something shuddered in his expression. He stood, putting distance between us once more. That's a story for another night. Lucian. A sharp knock on the door cut me off. A man entered without waiting for permission, tall, built like a boxer, with a scar running down his neck. His eyes found Lucian immediately. Boss, we need to talk. Now. Lucian's entire demeanor shifted, the vulnerable man from moments ago disappearing behind a mask of cold authority. 5 minutes. The man's gaze slid to me, assessing, calculating. Is she, mine? Lucian said, the word absolute, which means she's untouchable. Spread the word. The man nodded once and disappeared. I stared at Lucian, my heart racing. What does that mean? Mine? He looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something that looked almost like regret. It means you can't leave, Isla, he said softly. Not until this is over. The Volkovs saw you with me tonight. They know your face now. He paused, the weight of his next words hanging heavy in the air. Which means as of this moment, you're the most valuable target in the city. The glass slipped from my fingers, shattering against the floor. And I realized I wasn't a guest in this beautiful fortress. I was a prisoner. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the muzzle flash of gunfire, heard the explosion of glass, felt Lucian's hand pressing me down with that terrible gentleness. And beneath it all, his words echoed on repeat. You're the most valuable target in the city. The bedroom he'd given me was larger than my entire apartment. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in silk the color of midnight. French doors opened onto a balcony overlooking manicured gardens that stretched into darkness. Beautiful. Expensive. Cage-like. I'd tried the doors. Locked from the outside. I'd tried my phone. No signal, something about the house's security system. Lucien had explained with infuriating calm before leaving me here. For my protection, of course. Everything was for my protection. Now, as weak sunlight filtered through the curtains, I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, my mascara-stained face a reminder of how spectacularly my life had derailed in less than 12 hours. A soft knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. "Come in," I called, my voice hoarse. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 50s, elegant in a simple black dress, carrying a silver tray. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled into a neat bun, and her eyes, kind but knowing, assessed me with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd seen everything. "Good morning, Miss Hartley," she said, setting the tray on the bedside table. Coffee, fresh fruit, pastries that smelled like heaven. "I'm Elena. Mr. Moretti asked me to see that you're comfortable." "Comfortable," I repeated, the word tasting bitter. "Is that what we're calling this?" Elena's expression didn't change, but something softened in her gaze. "There are fresh clothes. In the closet. Your size, I believe. Mr. Moretti will see you for breakfast in an hour." She moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, you're safer here than anywhere else in the city. That's what everyone keeps saying." "That's because it's true." She glanced back at me. "The Volkovs don't forgive, Miss Hartley, and they don't forget. Whatever you think of Mr. Moretti, he's the only thing standing between you and a very ugly end." The door clicked shut behind her, leaving me alone with that cheerful thought. An hour later, I found myself walking through the labyrinth of hallways, following Elena's directions to what she'd called the morning room. The clothes fit perfectly: designer jeans, a soft cashmere sweater in dove gray. I'd showered, scrubbed away yesterday's tears, but I couldn't wash away the feeling of being a doll in someone else's dollhouse. The morning room was flooded with light, all windows and white furniture and greenery. Lucien sat at a small table, reading something on a tablet, a cup of coffee steaming beside him. He'd changed 2 dark slacks, a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with scars I hadn't noticed before. He looked up when I entered, and something flickered in his expression. Appreciation? Possession? I couldn't tell. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "You should eat." "I should go home." "That's not possible." "Then take me to the police." He set down the tablet, his patience clearly worn thin. "And tell them what, exactly? That you witnessed a shooting between 2 criminal organizations? That would make you a witness, Isla, which would make you even more of a target. The Volkovs have people everywhere, including inside the police department." I remained standing, my arms crossed. "So what, I'm supposed to just live here? Become your prisoner?" My guest. Semantics. Reality. He stood, moving around the table with that predatory grace that made my pulse quicken. "I understand you're angry, but your anger doesn't change the facts. You're in danger. I can protect you. End of discussion. You don't get to make that decision for me. I already have." He stopped inches away, close enough that I could smell his cologne, sandalwood, and something darker. "The moment you got in my car, the moment the Volkovs saw you with me, your old life ended. You can accept that and let me keep you safe, or you can fight it and make things infinitely harder for both of us." Heat flashed through me, anger and something else I didn't want to name. "You're unbelievable. I'm realistic." His voice softened slightly. "I know this isn't what you wanted, but I need you to understand something, Isla. In my world, weakness gets you killed. Hesitation gets you killed, and caring about the wrong person." He stopped abruptly, something raw crossing his features before he controlled it. "It gets everyone killed. Then why? Did you stop for me?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "If caring is so dangerous, why didn't you just drive past?" Lucien was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching mine. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I'm tired of watching people break alone." The vulnerability in those words stole my breath. This man, this dangerous, powerful man who commanded empires of violence, looked at me like I was something precious, something worth saving, even at great cost. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor shifted back to cold efficiency. "I have to handle something. Elena will stay with you. Don't leave the house, Lucien." He was already gone. I spent the day exploring my gilded cage, Elena shadowing me at a discreet distance. The house was enormous, 12 bedrooms, multiple offices, a library that made my heart ache with longing, even a gym and an indoor pool. Every room was perfectly decorated, perfectly maintained, perfectly empty. It was in the library, late afternoon light slanting through the windows, that I found the photograph. It sat on a shelf between books, partially hidden a younger Lucian, maybe 20, standing beside a beautiful woman with dark hair and a brilliant smile. His arm was around her shoulders, and he was laughing, actually laughing, his whole face transformed with joy. I'd never seen him look like that, open, happy, alive. That was Sophia. I spun around. Lucian stood in the doorway, still wearing his shirt from this morning, now wrinkled and marked with what looked like blood on the cuff. His face was hard, exhausted. Who was she? I asked quietly. He moved into the room, taking the photograph from my hands with surprising gentleness. Someone I loved, someone I failed to protect. His jaw tightened. The Volkovs killed her 3 years ago, to send me a message. The pieces clicked into place, his recognition of my pain, his need to save someone crying alone. The way he'd claimed me with such absolute authority. He was trying to rewrite his story, and I was his second chance. Lucian, I breathed. He set the photo down and looked at me, his eyes hollow with old grief. So you see, Isla, I won't apologize for keeping you here. I won't apologize for the guards outside your door or the restrictions on your freedom, because I've already buried one person I cared about. He stepped closer, his hand rising to cup my face with devastating tenderness. I won't bury another. 3 days passed in strange suspension. I woke to Elena's gentle knocking, ate meals I barely tasted, wandered the vast house like a ghost haunting her own life. Lucian was rarely there meetings, he said, situations that required his attention. Each time he left, armed men materialized at strategic points throughout the house, silent sentinels reminding me exactly what kind of world I'd fallen into. But the nights were different. The nights, he came to find me. Never to my room. Always somewhere neutral, the library, the sitting room, once the kitchen at 2 a.m. when neither of us could sleep. We talked about meaningless things and everything that mattered. Books we'd loved, places we'd never been, the weight of expectations we'd spent our lives trying to meet. He never touched me, never came too close. But the air between us grew heavier with each conversation, charged with something neither of us acknowledged. Until tonight. I'd found a record player in one of the parlors. Stacks of vinyl beside it, jazz, classical, old soul. I put on something slow, letting the music fill the empty spaces, and stood at the window watching rain streak down the glass. The storm had rolled in an hour ago, violent and cleansing, lightning illuminating the gardens in brief, stark flashes. I didn't hear him enter, didn't know he was there until his reflection appeared in the glass beside mine. You like the rain, he observed quietly. I like that it makes everything clean again, even if just for a moment. I glanced at him. He looked exhausted, tension carved into every line of his body. Bad day? They're all bad days. He moved to the sideboard, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey, our ritual now. He handed me one, our fingers brushing. The contact sent electricity up my arm. The Volkovs are pushing harder, testing boundaries. They know I have something to lose now. Me. You. The way he said it, possessive and protective and almost reverent, made my chest tighten. I took a sip of whiskey to steady myself. You could just let me go. Tell them I meant nothing. They wouldn't believe it. He turned to face me fully. And it would be a lie. The confession hung between us, dangerous and undeniable. Lucian, dance with me. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. What? Dance with me, he repeated, setting down his glass. Just once. I want to hold you without it being because someone's shooting at us. My heart hammered against my ribs. Every rational thought screamed warning, but I'd stopped listening to rational thoughts the moment I'd taken his hand in that parking lot. I set down my own glass and stepped toward him. He pulled me close, with a gentleness that contradicted everything I knew about him. One hand settled at the small of my back, the other cradling mine against his chest. I could feel his heartbeat beneath my palm, steady, strong, real. We moved to the music, slow and swaying, and for the first time since that night, I felt something other than fear, the warmth of his body against mine, the way he held me like I was something precious, breakable, the scent of him sandalwood and rain and something uniquely Lucian. "You're good at this," I murmured against his shoulder. "Sophia taught me." There was no pain in his voice now, just memory. She said every man should know how to dance, that it was the closest thing to honest conversation. "What are you telling me right now?" His hand tightened at my back, drawing me closer. "That I haven't felt alive in 3 years. That I've built my entire world around control and power and keeping everyone at arm's length." He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. And what I saw there stole my breath. "And then you got in my car, with tears on your face and defiance in your eyes, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to want something beyond survival." "Lucian," I whispered, his name a plea and a warning. "I know." His thumb traced small circles against my spine, the touch intimate, maddening. "I know this is impossible. I know I have no right to feel anything for you. You're here because of me, trapped because of my enemies, your life destroyed because I was selfish enough to want to save you." His voice dropped lower, raw with emotion. "But God help me, Isla, I can't regret it. I can't regret you." Lightning flashed, illuminating his face, the sharp angles, the barely leashed intensity, the vulnerability he only ever showed me. Thunder followed, shaking the windows. I should have stepped back, should have put distance between us, should have reminded him that this was Stockholm Syndrome or trauma bonding or any of the dozen psychological explanations for why my heart raced whenever he was near. Instead, I reached up and touched his face. His breath caught. Every muscle in his body went rigid, like he was using every ounce of control not to close the distance between us. "You terrify me," I admitted quietly. "Your world, your violence, the way you look at me like I'm something worth destroying everything for." My fingers traced the scar above his eyebrow. "But you also make me feel seen, real, like I'm not just a ghost haunting the edges of someone else's story." "You're not," he said fiercely. "You're the only real thing in my life right now." The music swelled. Rain hammered against the windows. And somewhere in the space between one breath and the next, something fundamental shifted between us. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. His forehead rested against mine, our lips inches apart, the tension so thick I could barely breathe. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. "Tell me this is wrong, that you want nothing to do with me, that you're only here because you have no choice. Tell me, Isla, and I'll never cross this line. I should have. God, I should have." But all I could think about was the loneliness in his eyes when he looked at Sophia's photograph, the way he'd shielded my body with his during the gunfire, how he danced like every moment mattered, because he'd learned too young that everything could be stolen in an instant. "I can't," I breathed. His control shattered. He kissed me like a drowning man, finding air desperate, consuming, 3 years of grief and loneliness and wanting poured into the press of his mouth against mine. His hand tangled in my hair, the other pulling me flush against him, and I kissed. I ripped him back just as fiercely, my fingers clutching his shirt like he was the only solid thing in a world gone liquid. The kiss was everything I'd feared and craved, dark and dangerous and absolutely inevitable. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were black with desire and something deeper, something that looked like salvation and damnation intertwined. "No going back now," he said roughly. "I know." And as thunder shook the house and rain washed the world clean outside, I realized I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. I'd fallen for the devil himself. And I wasn't sure I wanted redemption anymore. I woke to the smell of coffee and regret. Morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains, and it took me a moment to remember where I was. Not my assigned bedroom. The sitting room. I'd fallen asleep on the sofa after the kiss. My fingers lifted to my lips, still tender from the pressure of his mouth. The memory flooded back with devastating clarity. His hands in my hair, the desperate way he'd held me, the taste of whiskey and want. We'd kissed until the storm passed, until the record stopped playing, until reality crept back in, and he'd pulled away with something like anguish in his eyes. "Stay here," he'd whispered, tucking a blanket around me. "Sleep. I'll have Elena bring you breakfast." Then he'd disappeared, and I'd been too exhausted from adrenaline and emotion to follow. Now, in the harsh light of day, the weight of what I'd done settled over me like a shroud. I'd kissed a man who trafficked in violence, a man who held me prisoner, no matter how gilded the cage, A man whose enemies would kill me without hesitation if they found me. A man I was falling for despite every warning sign screaming at me to run. The door opened. Elena entered with her usual quiet efficiency, carrying a tray. But something was different in her expression, a tightness around her eyes, a wariness that hadn't been there before. "Good morning, Miss Hartley." She set the tray down with careful precision. "Mr. Moretti asked me to inform you he'll be away today. Business in the city." "Is everything all right?" I asked, sitting up and pushing hair from my face. Elena hesitated, a crack in her professional composure. "There was an incident last night. Nothing that concerns you directly, but..." She met my eyes. "The house will be on heightened security. Please don't leave the main wing." Cold dread pooled in my stomach. "What kind of incident?" "The kind Mr. Moretti handles." Her tone made it clear the conversation was over. "Ring if you need anything." She left me alone with my coffee and growing unease. The day crawled past with agonizing slowness. I tried to read but couldn't focus. Tried to eat but had no appetite. The house felt different today, the guards more visible, their presence a constant reminder of the danger lurking beyond these walls. Every footstep in the hallway made me flinch. Every distant sound sent my heart racing. By late afternoon, I couldn't take the isolation anymore. I ventured toward Lucian's study, a room Elena had told me was off limits, but I needed answers. Needed to understand what I'd gotten myself into. Needed to know if the man I'd kissed last night was the same man who'd ordered whatever incident had everyone on edge. The door was slightly ajar. I knew I shouldn't. Knew that crossing this threshold was different from crossing the one last night. But I'd already made so many terrible decisions, what was one more? I pushed the door open. The study was exactly what I'd expected. Dark wood, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A massive desk dominated the space, its surface covered in papers, a laptop, and photographs. I moved closer, my breath catching. Crime scene photos, bodies, blood, men I didn't recognize, their faces frozen in death's final expression. And beneath them, reports marked with names and addresses, and detailed accounts of violence that made my stomach turn. Looking for something? I spun around. Lucian stood in the doorway, still wearing yesterday's clothes, dried blood on his collar. His face was a mask of exhaustion and something darker, disappointment maybe, or resignation. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I didn't mean to," Elena said. "You were gone." I was. He moved into the room, closing the door behind him with a quiet click. Cleaning up the mess the Volkovs left on my doorstep. Literally. He gestured to the photographs. 3 of my men. Executed. Their bodies dumped at the gate as a message. Horror crawled up my spine. "Oh my God. This is my world, Isla." His voice was flat, empty of the warmth I'd heard last night. "This is what I do. I order men to kill. I make decisions that end lives. I've tortured people for information, pulled triggers without hesitation, and slept soundly afterward." He moved closer, and I could see the toll the day had taken on him. The shadows under his eyes, the tension in every line of his body. "Is that the man you kissed last night? The man you're starting to feel something for?" "Don't," I whispered. "Don't what? Tell you the truth?" He laughed bitterly. "You've been treating this like some dark romance. Like I'm a misunderstood anti-hero who just needs the right woman to save him. But I'm not redeemable, Isla. I'm not going to suddenly become a good man because you see something decent in me." Tears burned my eyes. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you need to understand what you're tangling yourself up in." He picked up one of the photographs, forcing me to look. "This is what loving me costs. Sophia learned that. Those 3 men learned that. And if you stay," his voice cracked, just for a moment, "if you stay, you'll learn it too." "So what? You're pushing me away? After last night?" "Last night was a mistake. The words were knives. I was weak, lonely. I let myself believe." He stopped, jaw clenching. "It doesn't matter what," I believed. "What matters is keeping you alive. And the best way to do that is to make sure you understand exactly who I am." I stepped toward him, anger rising to meet my hurt. "I know who you are, Lucian. I've known since the moment you pulled a gun and returned fire without flinching. I've known every time I see the guards, every time Elena warns me not to leave, every time you disappear to handle business." My voice shook. "You're a criminal, a killer. A man who built an empire on violence and fear. I know all of that. Then why are you still here? He demanded, his control finally fracturing. Why didn't you run when you had the chance? Why did you kiss me back? Because I'm broken too. The confession tore out of me. What? Because I spent years making myself smaller for someone who erased me anyway. Because I've been invisible for so long that when someone finally saw me, even someone dangerous, even someone impossible, I couldn't help but lean into it. Silence crashed between us, heavy with everything we couldn't take back. Lucian's eyes searched mine, and I saw the war raging behind them, the man who wanted to protect me, and the man who wanted to keep me, locked in brutal combat. You should hate me, he said quietly. I know. You should demand I let you go. I know. Isla. The window exploded. Glass shattered inward, and Lucian moved instantly, tackling me to the ground as bullets tore through the study. I screamed, his body covering mine, his hand cradling my head as chaos erupted around us. Alarms shrieked. Men shouted. Gunfire echoed through the house. And above it all, Lucian's voice in my ear, dark and absolute. Stay down. Don't move. I've got you. The Volkovs had brought the war to his doorstep, and I was caught in the crossfire. Time fractured into moments of pure survival. Lucian's weight pressing me into the floor, the acrid smell of gunpowder, shouts in Russian and Italian colliding in the hallway, the metallic taste of fear coating my tongue. Crawl, Lucian commanded, his mouth against my ear. Behind the desk. Now. I obeyed, my body moving on instinct, glass crunching beneath my palms as I scrambled toward cover. He moved with me, his body a shield between me and the shattered window. And in that moment I understood something fundamental about Lucian Moretti. He would die before he let them reach me. We made it behind the heavy oak desk just as another volley of bullets chewed through the room. Books exploded off shelves, leather and paper shredding. A lamp shattered. The laptop sparked and died. Lucian pulled a gun from the drawer with practiced efficiency, checking the magazine with the calm of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. His face was stone, but when his eyes met mine, I saw something raw flickering beneath the ice. Stay here, he said. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. Don't leave me. I have to. He cupped my face with his free hand, thumb brushing my cheekbone. I have to end this, Isla. If I don't, they'll keep coming. They'll keep pushing until... He stopped himself, jaw tightening. Just trust me. Please. Before I could respond, he was gone, moving toward the door with lethal grace. I pressed my back against the desk, knees drawn to my chest, and tried to remember how to breathe. Outside my hiding place, the world had become a war zone. Gunfire, breaking glass, men's voices raised in fury and pain, a scream cut short, the heavy thud of someone hitting the floor. And through it all, Lucian's voice, cold and absolute, issuing orders in Italian. I don't know how long I stayed there, trapped in my own body, listening to violence paint the walls of this house with blood. Minutes? Hours? Time had lost all meaning. Then, silence. Terrible, ringing silence. Isla. Lucian's voice, rough and strained. It's over. You can come out. I forced myself to move, every muscle shaking, and emerged from behind the desk. The study was destroyed. Bullet holes punctured the walls like obscene art. The curtains hung in tatters. And in the doorway stood Lucian, gun still in hand, his white shirt now dark with blood. Oh God. I breathed. You're hurt. It's not mine. He looked down at himself almost absently, then back at me. Most of it isn't mine. Most, not all. I crossed the room on unsteady legs, reaching for him, needing to confirm he was real and whole and alive. My hands found his chest, his arms, searching for wounds. He caught my wrists gently, stopping me. I'm fine, he said. Scratches, nothing serious. Let me see, Isla. His grip tightened. I need you to listen to me. We have to move. The Volkovs will regroup and come back with more men. This house isn't safe anymore. Where will we go? I have a place. Secure. Off the grid. He released my wrists and moved to a panel in the wall I hadn't noticed before. It swung open to reveal a safe. He pulled out passports, cash, a burner phone, pack light, 5 minutes. Only what you can carry. The efficiency of his movements, the way he'd clearly planned for this exact scenario, sent a chill through me. This was his life. Contingencies and escape routes and always being one step ahead of death. How many? I asked quietly. He paused, papers in hand. What? How many of them are dead? Something flickered in his eyes, not quite guilt, but acknowledgement of what he was, what he'd just done. 4 breached the house. None of them are walking out. 4 men, dead, because they'd tried to reach me. And your people? 2 injured. None dead. He straightened, facing me fully. I told you what I was, Isla. I told you this would be your life if you stayed. I know. Do you? He moved closer, and I could see the adrenaline still coursing through him, the barely leashed violence that had kept us alive. Because there's no going back after this. The Volkovs won't stop. They'll hunt us, track us, use every resource they have to find you and hurt you. And I'll kill every single one of them who tries. His hand came up, cupping my face with blood-stained fingers. So I need to know right now. Do you want out? Do you want me to hand you over to federal protection? Witness relocation? Let you disappear into a normal life? The question hung between us like a blade. I should have said yes. Should have taken the escape he was offering. Run as far and fast as I could from this world of bullets and blood. Any sane person would have. But when I looked at him, at the man who'd thrown himself over me without hesitation, who'd fought his way back to me through violence and chaos, who was offering me freedom, even though it clearly cost him everything I knew. My answer had been decided the moment his lips touched mine. No, I whispered. His eyes closed briefly, something like pain crossing his features. Isla, I'm not leaving you. I pressed my hand over his heart, feeling it race beneath my palm. I'm terrified. I'm way over my head. I have no idea what I'm doing or how any of this ends, but I'm not leaving you, Lucian. You're going to regret this, he said roughly. One day, you're going to wake up and realize what you've sacrificed for me, and you're going to hate. I kissed him, hard and desperate, and tasting of fear and choice, and the death of who I used to be. He made a sound low in his throat, surrender or triumph. I couldn't tell, and kissed me back like he was starving. His arms came around me, pulling me against him. And for one suspended moment, the destroyed room, the blood, the danger, all of it faded. There was only this, only us. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. 4 minutes, he murmured against my lips. Then we run. Together. Together, he agreed. I pulled away, moving toward the door, when movement in my peripheral vision made me freeze. A man stood in the hallway, blood-soaked, swaying, gun rising with the last of his strength, aimed at Lucian's back. Lucian! I screamed. Everything happened in slow motion, Lucian turning, the Russian's finger tightening on the trigger, my body moving without thought, throwing myself between them. The gunshot was deafening. And then I was falling, Lucian's voice roaring my name, the world tilting sideways as pain exploded through my shoulder. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was Lucian's face, twisted in anguish and rage, as he caught me in his arms. Pain dragged me back to consciousness in waves, sharp, burning, radiating from my left shoulder through every nerve ending in my body. I tried to move and gasped, the sound broken and small. Don't, Lucian's voice, hoarse and closer than I expected. Stay still, you're safe. I forced my eyes open, dim lighting, unfamiliar ceiling. The smell of antiseptic and something metallic blood, probably mine. I turned my head slowly, fighting nausea, and found him. Lucian sat beside the bed, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. He'd changed clothes, dark jeans, a black t-shirt, but blood still stained his forearms. His shoulders shook with something that looked like silent devastation. Lucian, I whispered. His head snapped up, and the expression on his face nearly broke me. Raw. Wrecked. Like he'd been crying, though his eyes were dry now, just red-rimmed and hollow. You're awake. He reached for me, then stopped himself, his hand hovering inches from my face. How do you feel? Like I got shot. A sound escaped him, half laugh, half sob. You did. Straight through. The bullet missed everything important, but his voice cracked. You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have gotten between you and a bullet. I tried for a smile, though pain made it more of a grimace. Seemed like a good idea at the time. It was the stupidest thing you could have done. He finally touched me, his fingers feathering across my uninjured shoulder, my collarbone, my jaw, like he was confirming I was real. You could have died, Isla. I watched the bullet hit you and thought. He stopped, closing his eyes. I thought I'd lost you. You didn't. But I could have. When he opened his eyes again, they burned with something fierce and fragile. Do you understand what you did to me? Watching you fall, seeing your blood, his hand fisted in the sheets beside me. I killed him. The man who shot you. I emptied my gun into him and it still wasn't enough. I wanted to bring him back just so I could kill him again. The violence in his words should have frightened me. Instead, I felt the twisted logic of it settle into my bones. He'd avenged me with the only currency his world understood. Where are we? I asked. Safe house. 2 hours outside the city. He gestured vaguely. Off the grid. No one knows about this place except my most trusted people. A doctor came, patched you up. You've been out for 6 hours. 6 hours. I'd been unconscious for 6 hours, while he sat here, drowning in guilt and fear. Come here, I said softly. He shook his head. I should let you rest. Lucian, please. He hesitated, then carefully shifted onto the bed beside me, mindful of my injury. When I turned into him, resting my head against his chest, his arms came around me with devastating gentleness. I could feel his heart racing, could feel the tremors running through him. I'm sorry, he whispered into my hair. I'm so goddamn sorry. This is my fault. All of it. You were safe before me. You were invisible, but you were safe, and Stop. I pressed my hand over his heart. I chose this. I chose you, even knowing what it meant. You didn't know it meant taking a bullet. Didn't I? I tilted my head back to look at him. I've watched you, Lucian. I've seen how you move, how you calculate every risk, how you carry the weight of keeping everyone safe. You would have died before letting that bullet reach me. So what was I supposed to do? Stand there and watch you sacrifice yourself? His jaw clenched. Yes. No. My fingers curled into his shirt. You don't get to be the only one who protects. You don't get to be the only one willing to bleed. Something broke in his expression. He buried his face against my neck, his breath hot against my skin, and I felt wetness on my throat, tears he'd been holding back since the moment I fell. I can't lose you, he said roughly. I barely survived losing Sophia. If something happens to you because of me, because of my world, his arms tightened fractionally. I won't come back from that, Isla. I won't. I turned my head, pressing a kiss to his temple. Then we make sure nothing happens. Together. How can you still want this? His voice was broken, disbelieving. How can you look at what loving me costs and still... Because I see you. I waited until he lifted his head, until I could meet those dark, tortured eyes. Not the Moretti boss. Not the monster everyone else sees. I see the man who dances to old records, who keeps Sophia's picture because forgetting her would dishonor her memory, who sat beside my bed for 6 hours terrified I wouldn't wake up. My hand came up to cup his face. I see the man who's been alone for so long he forgot what it felt like to have someone choose him back. A shudder ran through him. You're going to destroy me. Maybe. I stroked my thumb across his cheekbone. Or maybe we'll destroy each other and build something new from the ashes. He kissed me then, soft and desperate and tasting of salt and surrender. His hand cradled the back of my head, careful not to jostle my injury, and I kissed him back with everything I had. Every fear, every choice, every impossible feeling I'd been trying to deny. When we broke apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. I love you, he whispered. I shouldn't. It's selfish and dangerous, and going to get us both killed. But I love you, Isla Hartley, and I'm done pretending I don't. My breath caught. Lucian, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Needed you to understand why His phone buzzed, cutting him off. He pulled it out, his expression hardening as he read the screen. Fuck. What is it? He stood, suddenly all business. The vulnerable man from moments ago locked away behind cold efficiency. The Volkovs just released a statement. They know you took a bullet for me. They know you're not just leverage anymore. Dread pooled in my stomach. What does that mean? He looked at me, and I saw the fear beneath the control. It means they've escalated. You're not a hostage to them anymore, Isla. He ran a hand through his hair. You're my weakness, my vulnerability. which makes you the single most valuable target in their war against me. So what do? We end this. His voice went cold, absolute. I've spent 3 years playing defense, trying to maintain peace, avoiding all-out war, but they came into my home, they shot you, they crossed every line that mattered. He looked at me, and I saw the killer surface, the man who'd built an empire on calculated violence. So I'm going to give them exactly what they've been asking for. Lucian, what are you saying? He crouched beside the bed, taking my hand in both of his. I'm saying I'm going to war, Isla. Full-scale, no-holds-barred war. And when it's over, either the Volkovs will be destroyed. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Either the Volkovs would be destroyed, or we would be. And as I looked into his eyes, seeing the ruthless determination burning there, I realized something that should have terrified me but somehow didn't. I was ready to go to war beside him, even if it meant neither of us survived. The war began at midnight. I knew because I watched Lucian prepare for it, the ritual of a man embracing the darkest parts of himself. He stood in the safe house's makeshift armory, methodically loading weapons, checking magazines, strapping knives to his body with the precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. I sat on a chair near the door, my arm in a sling, still weak from blood loss but refusing to stay in bed. If he was walking into hell, I needed to see him off, needed to memorize every detail in case I couldn't finish that thought. You should be resting, he said without looking up. So should you. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I'll rest when this is over. Lucian. I waited until he turned to face me. Promise me you'll come back. Something shifted in his expression. Regret, determination, love so fierce it hurt to look at. He crossed to me, kneeling so we were eye level, his hands gentle on my knees. I can't promise that, he said quietly. You know I can't. Then promise me you'll try. My voice cracked. Promise me you won't throw your life away for revenge. This isn't revenge. His thumb traced circles on my knee, the touch grounding. This is survival. The Volkovs won't stop until one of us is buried. I'd rather it be them. What if? I had to force the words out. What if you don't win? Then you run. His grip tightened. Marco has instructions. Money, new identity, transportation out of the country. You disappear and never look back. I'm not running. Isla, I'm not, I said fiercely. If you fall, I fall with you. That's how this works now. Anguish flooded his face. Don't say that. Don't. He pressed his forehead against my knees, his shoulders shaking. You have to survive this. Even if I don't. You have to live, Isla. Promise me. I slid my good hand into his hair, the dark strands soft between my fingers. I can't promise that any more than you can promise to come back. He made a sound broken and raw, then lifted his head. His eyes were wet, but no tears fell. You've ruined me, he whispered. Completely. Utterly. I was ready to die before I met you. Welcomed it, even. But now... His hand came up to cup my face. Now I'm terrified of losing what we have, of leaving you alone. Then come back to me. I leaned into his touch. Fight like hell and come back. And if I do... His voice dropped lower, intimate. If I survive this, if I tear the Volkovs apart and walk back through that door, what then, Isla? What do we become? The question hung between us, heavy with possibility and impossibility. What did the future look like for a woman who loved a monster? For a man who'd built his empire on blood? I don't know, I admitted, but I want to find out. Something ignited in his eyes, desire and desperation and the reckless hope of the condemned. I need you, he breathed. Before I go, before everything burns, I need. He didn't finish. Didn't have to. I stood, careful of my injury, and took his hand. Then, take me. He carried me to the bedroom with reverence, laying me on the bed like I was something sacred. The lamplight cast shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp angles, the barely leashed hunger in his eyes. Your shoulder, he started. I don't care. I reached for him with my good hand, pulling him down to me. I need this too. Need to feel alive with you. Need to know that no matter what happens tonight, we had this. He kissed me then, slow and deep and tasting of goodbye and forever. His hands moved over me with aching gentleness, peeling away my clothes with careful precision, mindful of every wince and gasp. When his fingers found bare skin, I arched into his touch, craving more despite the pain radiating through my shoulder. "Tell me if it hurts," he murmured against my throat. "Tell me if you need me to stop." "Don't stop," I breathed. "Please, Lucian, don't stop." His control frayed. I felt it in the way his hands trembled as they mapped my body, in the sharp intake of breath when I fumbled with his shirt buttons, in the reverence and possession warring in every touch. He undressed slowly, revealing the canvas of scars that marked his skin, a history of violence written in healed wounds and near misses. I traced them with my fingers, these reminders of how fragile life was in his world. How many times he'd almost been taken from me before I even knew him. "You're beautiful," I whispered. He caught my hand, pressed a kiss to my palm. "You're everything." When he finally moved over me, settling between my thighs with exquisite care, the world narrowed to just this, his weight, his warmth, his eyes locked on mine with an intensity that stole my breath. "I love you," he said again, the words a vow. "Whatever happens, remember that. Remember I loved you enough to want to be better, even if I never figured out how. I love you too." The confession felt like breaking and healing all at once. "I love you, Lucian Moretti. Every dark, impossible part of you." He kissed me as he entered me, swallowing my gasp, moving with a tenderness that contradicted everything I knew about him. There was no rush, no urgency, just the slow, devastating intimacy of two people memorizing each other, learning every sound, every shiver, every place that made the other come undone. My good hand clutched his shoulder, holding him close as pleasure built in waves. His forehead pressed against mine, our breaths mingling, and in that moment we weren't a mob boss and the woman he'd dragged into his world. We were just two broken people finding wholeness in each other. "Stay with me," I whispered as the tension coiled tighter. "Stay with me, Lucian. Always," he promised against my lips. "In this life or the next. Always." We fell together, a crescendo of pleasure and pain and love, so fierce it felt like burning. He caught my cry with his mouth, and I felt his own release shudder through him, his arms trembling with the effort of holding himself careful despite the intensity. After, he collapsed beside me, pulling me against his chest with infinite gentleness. I could feel his heart racing, could feel the dampness on his cheeks that he'd never acknowledge. "Thank you," he whispered into my hair. "For what?" "For seeing me. For choosing me. For making me remember what it felt like to be human." I pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. "Come back to me and you can thank me properly." His arms tightened fractionally. "Deal." An hour later, I watched from the window as he drove away, his car disappearing into the pre-dawn darkness. Marco stood beside me, silent and vigilant, a reminder that even here, I was never truly alone. My shoulder throbbed. My heart ached, and somewhere in the city, the man I loved was walking into a war that might consume him. "He'll come back," Marco said quietly. "The boss always does." I touched the window glass, still warm from where my forehead had rested. "And if he doesn't?" Marco was quiet for a long moment. "Then we make sure the Volkovs regret ever being born." As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire, I made a promise to the empty horizon. If Lucian fell tonight, I wouldn't run. I'd burn the Volkovs' world to ash myself. The call came at 4:47 a.m. I knew because I'd been staring at the clock for 3 hours, watching the minutes crawl past like years. Each second without word was agony. Each passing moment another opportunity for everything to fall apart. Marco answered his phone in the doorway, his voice low and clipped. I watched his expression shift tension, then something that might have been relief and my heart stopped beating. "He's alive," Marco said, turning to me. "It's over." The words didn't register at first. Couldn't. I'd spent the entire night preparing myself for devastation, building walls around my heart to survive the worst news. Now those walls crumbled, and I collapsed back into the chair, a sob tearing from my throat. "Where is he?" I managed. "Is he hurt?" He's cleaning up. 30 minutes. Maybe less." Marco's expression softened slightly. "He asked me to tell you. He's coming home." Home. As if this safe house, this temporary shelter from violence, could ever be that. But maybe home wasn't a place. Maybe it was just wherever we ended up together, bloodied and broken and somehow still breathing. I spent those 30 minutes pacing, my injured shoulder screaming in protest, adrenaline overriding pain. Marco tried to get me to sit, to rest, but I couldn't. Not until I saw him, not until I touched him and confirmed he was real. The sound of tires on gravel sent me running to the door. Lucian emerged from the car like something from a nightmare, covered in blood and soot, his shirt torn, a gash above his eyebrow still bleeding sluggishly. But he was walking, moving, alive. Our eyes met across the distance, and something in his expression broke. I was moving before I could think, running despite Marco's protests, despite my injury, despite everything. Lucian caught me halfway, his arms coming around me with crushing force, and we stood there in the breaking dawn, holding each other like the world had ended and been reborn. "You came back," I sobbed into his chest. "You came back. I promised I'd try." His voice was wrecked, exhausted. I promised. I pulled back just enough to see his face, my hands framing it, checking for serious damage. The cut on his eyebrow, bruises forming along his jaw, but his eyes were clear, haunted, but clear. "The Volkovs?" I asked. "Finished." The word was final, absolute. Dmitry Volkov is dead. His lieutenants scattered. The ones who survived know what happens if they come back. His hand came up to cover mine. "It's over, Isla. The war is over." Relief and horror warred in my chest. He'd done it. He'd survived. But at what cost? How many bodies had he left in his wake? How much of his humanity had he sacrificed to keep us safe? As if reading my thoughts, he said quietly, "I won't ask you to forgive what I did tonight. Won't pretend I'm anything other than what you saw. I'm not asking for pretense." I pressed my forehead to his. "I'm just asking you to stay, to be here, to let me love you despite everything." His breath hitched. "Even now? Even knowing, especially now?" I kissed him softly, tasting blood and smoke and survival. "We made it through, Lucian. Against every odd, against every weapon pointed at us, we made it through." He kissed me back desperately, his hands gentle, despite the violence still thrumming through him. When we broke apart, he was crying silent tears, cutting tracks through the dirt on his face. "I thought I'd lost the ability to feel this," he whispered. "Thought Sophia took it with her when she died. But you," his voice cracked, "you made me believe I could have something beautiful again, even in all this ugliness." "Then let's make something beautiful," I said. "Let's take whatever time we have and make it worth every scar, every bullet, every terrible choice that brought us here." 3 months later, I stood on a different balcony, watching the sun set over a city that no longer felt like a war zone. The transition hadn't been easy. The nightmares still came, gunfire and blood, and the moment the bullet hit me, my shoulder ached when it rained. Sometimes I'd wake gasping, convinced Lucian hadn't made it home that night, only to find him beside me, solid and warm and real. He'd changed too, stepped back from the daily violence, delegating more to Marco and his other trusted people. The empire still ran, still generated the wealth and power that came with his name, but Lucian had started looking for exits, ways to legitimize, ways to build something that wouldn't require him to kill to maintain it. It would take years, maybe decades, but he was trying, for me, for us, for the future we'd chosen in blood and desperation. Arms wrapped around me from behind, careful of my healing shoulder. Lucian pressed a kiss to my neck, his presence anchoring me to this moment. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured. "How impossible this is." I leaned back into him, how every rational part of me should have run, should still run, but instead I'm standing here, in love with a man who burns down empires before breakfast. His chest rumbled with quiet laughter. "When you put it like that, it does sound insane." "It is insane." I turned in his arms, meeting those dark eyes that no longer looked quite so haunted. "But it's ours." "Ours," he agreed, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Are you happy, Isla? Truly?" I considered the question. Happy felt too simple a word for what we had. We'd built our love on ruins and bloodshed, on impossible choices and devastating consequences. But when I looked at him, at the man who'd risked everything to keep me safe, who fought daily with his own darkness to become someone worthy of my choice, I knew my answer. "I'm alive," I said. "Really, truly alive. For the first time in years." I pressed my hand over his heart. "You make me feel alive, Lucian Moretti, even when you terrify me, even when this whole thing feels like dancing on the edge of a knife." "I love you," he said, like the words were prayer and promise combined. Every day, I'll work to deserve that feeling. To deserve you. You already do. We stood there as the sun painted the sky in shades of fire, two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and somehow made it mean something. The road ahead was uncertain. His world would always carry danger. My choice would always carry consequences. But as Lucian kissed me with the tenderness of a man who'd learned to cherish what he'd nearly lost, I knew I'd make the same choice again. Every single time. Because some loves were worth burning for, and ours had already survived the flames. Sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't the bullet you see coming. It's the person you never expected to save you, and the love you never planned to keep.